Donald Trump showed up at the convention to create clips to play for his very white, very right-wing MAGA fan base of him standing up to the blacks.
So by now you know that Donald Trump accepted an invitation to the National Association of Black Journalists. Now, this, of course, is an organization that I'm not allowed to belong to because I guess racial segregation is still a thing in some parts of this country, especially if you're a journalist or a reporter or what have you. That said, the event went on. Donald Trump got there. Kamala Harris was supposed to be there too. She didn't show up. But you don't hear much about that. These journalists are just fine with Kamala Harris taking advantage of them, taking them for granted, and just saying, I don't have to show up. These people will love me and support me anyway. But instead, you're hearing about what Donald Trump did and what he said. Listen, by now, I'm sure you've seen the clips. I'm more interested in the reaction to what Donald Trump said. But just in case you're just getting up to speed, take a look at how the entire thing started. Just the first question and Donald Trump's response. That's really all you need to see.
People did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much. And, you know, and I say this, historically, black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke. And I saved them and I gave them long-term financing and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe that black voters should trust you with another 4 years.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work, in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
A couple of things that you just saw, if you're watching it the same way I'm watching it. First of all, you saw Donald Trump being Donald Trump. He wasn't phony. He wasn't kiss ass. He wasn't trying to ingratiate himself. He responded to an attack with a counterattack. We've seen Donald Trump over the course of the last 9-10 years in public life do exactly that. No matter what race the person is who's attacking him, that's what he's going to do. You also saw Donald Trump walking into the lion's den, knowing that it was going to be hostile, knowing that it was going to be an uncomfortable situation, but he submitted himself to this because he wants to reach out to anyone who wants to have a conversation. Do you know that Kamala Harris has not granted one interview to anyone? I mean, even Rachel Maddow, even someone who would not treat it like an interview, but like a full body massage. She hasn't sat down with one journalist since she has assumed the throne of the Democrat nomination that Joe Biden was forced to relinquish. Isn't that a problem? She won't talk to anyone that's not scripted and telepromptered. I mean, even the RuPaul thing was on teleprompter. And Donald Trump is willing to go in there and say, okay, give me what you got. But if you're going to give me what you got, be ready to get it back. Because that's what Donald Trump does. And we like that about him. We like that he fights. We like that he has courage. We like that he walks into the lion's den and does that. By the way, you notice that first question, which is just obviously and not even debatable how rude it was and how aggressive it was and how it was meant to create an adversarial situation, it began with a fascinating admission. Let me just play it for you in case you missed it.
People did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today.
The membership of the National Association of Black Journalists thought it wasn't appropriate for him to be there. The National Association of Black Journalists thought it would be inappropriate to have the leading candidate for president at their event for a newsworthy interview because they're journalists. That tells you everything you need to know. And if anybody out there is characterizing this as some sort of racist attack on this journalist, this woman from ABC News, if anyone is saying that he only acted this way because she's black, can I just remind you of something, please? For God's sake, don't we have any memory in this nation at all? Am I the only one? Remember this moment in 2015, the first major debate of the Republican candidates, the first time we got to see Donald Trump as a candidate with his counterparts on the same stage as him?
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
I'll never get over that. Only Rosie O'Donnell. He responded to Megyn Kelly in that debate the same way he responded to this journalist. When you go after him that way, and yes, this was like, 3 Megyn Kellys ago. When you go after him that way, he's going to push back. Gone are the days of John McCain and Mitt Romney saying, oh, shucks. Now, I know that you're just trying to give me a gotcha question, but I'm not going to fall for that trick. I just want to be your friend. No, Donald Trump knows that they're not trying to be his friend and they have no interest in being his friend. So why should he pretend? Why should he play? Why should he bullshit? And by the way, you saw the reaction of the crowd. From that moment forward, people were like, oh, okay, it's a brand new game now. And it's about time we had people fighting. So that's what you saw yesterday from Donald Trump, which is fine. And we know who he is. And this is exactly what you should expect. And that's exactly what the media should have expected. And they did expect it. That's why they created this drama. The bigger question for all of us to decide is, does this help? See, it doesn't matter if, hey, that's just Trump and I love that Trump does what Trump does. That's fine. But does it help? Does it help Donald Trump get elected in November? Because every single thing that happens between now and Election Day, that is all that matters. Does whatever happened today help Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris in November? Period. End of discussion. Every single thing you see needs to be shot through that lens. Does it help? Well, let's see. First of all, we have a reaction. We have a reaction mostly from MSNBC. We'll start with Joy Reid. Here's Joy Reid's reaction to what happened with the National Association of Black Journalists. And while you watch this, think to yourself, why is she freaking out like this?
I also just want to say one quick thing about this invitation to the president and board of NABJ. Y'all got played. Donald Trump showed up at the convention for exactly 3 reasons. 1, to try to dispel the notion that he's scared to debate a black woman, a presumption one can draw from his refusal to commit to debating VP Harris, who, again, for those in the back, is a black and Asian woman. It's also why he lost it like a grumbly senior at the retirement home who didn't get his Jell-O dessert when ABC's Rachel Scott challenged him to answer basic questions. And how likely is it that he would have shown up at all if the lady from the network that paid a $787 million legal settlement for spreading the big lie wasn't included on the panel? Second, to steal the attention that Vice President Kamala Harris has hijacked from him because she's just more interesting and her support is more joyous and rooted in popular American culture. And 3, to create clips to play for his very white, very right-wing MAGA fan base of him standing up to the blacks.
This is a guy who they falsely claimed 5 years ago said after Charlottesville that there were very fine people on both sides of the fight down in Charlottesville. In other words, these are the people who falsely claimed that Donald Trump said neo-Nazis and white nationalists were very fine people. Now, of course, he never said that. But as far as their narrative and their audience goes, they've been calling him Hitler. They've been calling him a fascist. They've been calling him a Klansman. They've been calling him racist. And they've been saying that he's a threat to the very country that we're living in. And if he gets elected, there won't be another election ever again. So why is this making them freak out? An appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists. I mean, this is nothing compared to what they claim he's been saying. This is nothing compared to what they've been calling him. They should be like, well, yeah, see, he is Hitler. But no, there's an extra level of freak out going on here. And I'm going to reveal why in a minute. But spoiler alert, it's because everything that they've done, all of the criminal charges, all of the trials, all of the lies, all of the political violence, none of it's worked. None of it has worked. And so now here we go again with another he's racist controversy that also isn't going to work, at least not with black voters. And we'll show you that in a minute because they are absolutely petrified about black voters right now. Watch.
Deep breaths. I watched that today in absolute horror. You were one of the people who spoke out against this invitation. Talk to me about how in the world it happened in the first place.
Well, first of all, the NABJ, an advocacy group for Black journalists, the Black press, extends invitations every election cycle to the presidential candidates. But for this cycle, this special and unique cycle, Donald Trump was invited. But we know the story, and this is where I'm going to put the butt in. We know the story. We've seen the movie. We spit the popcorn out and all of that. We know who he is to the Black press, how he has berated us, how his minions have berated us, from himself to Tucker Carlson, who have come after me, Yamiche Alcindor, and you, Joy. And so many others, like Sonny Hostin from The View, Donna Brazile, Abby Phillips, so many, Don Lemon. And understanding this, and you're an advocacy group for the press, why would you invite someone that in 2018 you said you were appalled at his actions and used our pictures to say that so you're not appalled? What was this for? Was this for showing clout? Was this really for journalism's sake? Or was this just to pop your collar, I can get a presidential candidate? This was, It was insulting. My chest hurt the whole time. It was a shock and awe moment. I'm still trying to deal with it because the way he went after Rachel, I'm very concerned.
I hope you're seeing through this, right? I mean, think about it for a minute. They're appalled that he was invited. They're appalled that this happened. They're appalled that this person was allowed in the room. If they're an advocacy group and they're all liberal and they want to stop Donald Trump, why wouldn't they want an event like this? Why wouldn't they want a moment like this? Why wouldn't they want the ability to say, you see what a monster he is? And yet they're angry that the invitation was extended and accepted. Now, that doesn't make much sense, does it? And the only answer is because he actually said things that they didn't want people to hear. One of the things he said was challenging Kamala Harris as a fake, as a fraud, as a phony. You see, Kamala Harris comes across to a lot of people as, what are the words I'm looking for? A fake, a fraud, a phony. And she specifically comes across that way to black voters. You see, up until very recently, she very much emphasized just one part of it, her ethnicity. And it's understandable. She has an Indian-sounding name. It's Kamala. And she was raised from the age of 7 years old by her Indian mother. And you see, when she was elected to the Senate, she was celebrated as the first Indian American senator. You know why? You know why? It's not because she's not black. No, but you see, she wasn't the first black senator. She wasn't even the first black woman senator. And see, when you're a liberal, when you're an identity politics politician, when you're a I've checked a box kind of elected official, you gotta be first. You gotta be some sort of groundbreaking, historic, glass ceiling breaking first. And so cynically, Kamala Harris emphasized her Indian heritage at that time because she had to be first. She had to be historic. She had to be groundbreaking. So all the headlines at the time was that she was the first Indian American attorney general. She was the first Indian American senator. And that's fine. She's entitled. She is Indian. The cynical aspect of her racial politics, the fake, phony, fraudulent aspect is that now, everywhere you look, all she is the first black woman president. You see, it's much more important for her to be black right now. Why? Well, because the black vote's a lot more important than the Indian vote. That's why. Don't believe me? Well, let's wait a little later into the evening on MSNBC and see it play out in real time. Here's Alex Wagner with her panel.
Overtly questioning her blackness. It's also going after code switching. Fox News has a chyron, this was from last night, talking about Kamala Harris's different accents that she uses during rallies. J.D. Vance tonight in Arizona says that Harris put on a Southern accent for a Georgia audience, echoing Fox. Trump tonight said the same thing at his rally in Pennsylvania.
That's exactly what this is. It is code switching. I love that she used quotation marks there. You see, there are voters in the black community who see this and they see right through it. They see that she goes down to Atlanta. We showed you the clip yesterday. And she said, you're going to do it again in 2024, right? Remember? But then when she was on RuPaul, she was just very, speaking in the way that she usually speaks. It is code switching. She's being able to put on whatever hat she wants to accommodate and pander to whatever audience she wants. And there's a deep concern that black voters see through it and they think she's inauthentic, that she's a fraud. And that's fair and that's understandable. And that's why they didn't want him in that room. They didn't want him in that room at all. In fact, a little later on the MSNBC lineup, they really did go nuts on MSNBC. They refused to even show any clips of the event. That's right. They had a whole panel discussion outraged over what Donald Trump said and did, but they refused to show their audience the clips. Why? I mean, again, understand, these people want to defeat Donald Trump. The MSNBC lineup does not want him to win the election. So if these clips are so objectionable and so awful and so horrible, why aren't they playing it over and over again to damage him? Because they don't want their audience to see it. Why?
We're not going to re-air this now. I'm just going to put up some fact check because he made this false and racially incendiary claim, which Michael just mentioned. I'll tell you what the AP said because we prepared this, that it falsely suggests Harris somehow misled her voters about her race, that's false. This reached a level the Biden White House has condemned it today. Harris's mother, as many people already know, is of Indian descent. Her father is black from Jamaica. The quote I'll read briefly was Trump saying that now she wants to be known as black as if this were some sort of new development. And Congresswoman, again, I'll be as transparent as possible with viewers. We didn't view this as the top story. We're not re-airing the entire clip. We did have this prepared to mention, and Michael mentioned it. And so understanding that that's false.
They don't want the audience to see it. It's just false. That's all that you care about. That's all that you need to know. Now just trust us. Curious, isn't it? What else is happening? Well, let's turn further on down the line on MSNBC again. Who better to talk about racial outrage than, well, their own resident paid race baiter, Al Sharpton.
He came to do what he did. He came to use them as a backboard to score with the MAGA crowd to say, I'm one of y'all. I will go to their own conference and do everything but call them the N-word. And I will try and act like their candidate, their hero, this strong black woman they're rallying around. She didn't even say she was black until a little while ago. When did we not know she was black? when she was elected the first black district attorney of San Francisco, or maybe when she was elected the first black attorney general of the state of California. Or maybe we missed it when we said she was the only black woman in the U.S. Senate or the only black woman to run for vice president. Why play into this illusionary picture when we can deal with who the painter of the picture is? Donald Trump saw the NABJ as a useful platform for him to show that he will stand up to blacks and call us whatever he wants to call us and attack our people in their face, and they ain't gonna do anything about it. That's what he went to do, and that's what he did.
Do you notice how most of the anger is at the National Association of Black Journalists for letting him in the room? Isn't that a fascinating, consistent message across the board from these activists at MSNBC? Again, if what Donald Trump did and said at this event is so damaging to Donald Trump, why aren't they celebrating? Or at the very least, faking outrage? Was anything that happened at the National Association of Black Journalists and what Donald Trump said? I showed you the opening and how he would push back against Rachel Scott, and then what he said about Kamala Harris, appropriately kind of code switching and deciding that she'll accommodate whatever audience is in front of her based on her racial identity or regional identity. Is any of that worse than Trump saying that Klansmen and neo-Nazis are very fine people, which of course was a lie, but they still believe it, or at least they still say it? Is any of that worse than Donald Trump saying that Jamaica is an S-hole country that they also claim was a racist thing to say? Is there anything that happened yesterday worse than Donald Trump being literally Hitler? So why all the outrage over this? Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Here's Kamala Harris and Karine Jean-Pierre reacting.
The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a leader who tells the truth, a leader who does not respond with hostility and anger when confronted with the facts.
It doesn't matter if it's a former leader, a former president. It is insulting. And we have to she is the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. We have to put some respect on her name.
Put some respect on her name. Okay. Based on the title, not necessarily based on any achievement. That's fine. That's fine. I do love Kamala Harris saying that, we need the American people deserve better, and they deserve a person who isn't going to respond with such rude outrage when challenged. Let's play that clip, if we could, of Kamala Harris responding to being challenged by a journalist, any journalist. Yeah, we don't have that. She won't even sit in the room so that we can see her respond. Now, everything is scripted. Everything's teleprompted, and she's never challenged by anyone. She's Kamala Harris, don't you know? She's inherited the nomination. So why? Why do they continue to do this, and why are they so panicked about what he said in that room to black journalists and broadcast specifically for black audiences? Well, maybe this will tell you why.
And tell me what appeals to you about Trump.
His business acumen. When Donald Trump was president, we were all doing a lot better financially. He's always been a business icon. So why wouldn't we want that business icon to be president?
And he had this to say about Harris.
I think she hasn't done anything worth mentioning.
What would you have wanted to see Vice President Harris accomplish that she has not?
I would have liked her to kind of bring a calm to the border. The border crisis has gotten out of hand.
Yeah, see, he knows better. He knows that Kamala Harris is, in fact, the border czar, that she is partly responsible by being the part of the Biden administration that focused on immigration and border that is responsible for the disaster that's down there. And he likes Donald Trump and his business acumen. See, this is a reasonable voter who happens to be black, who is now thinking a second time and breaking out of the mold that he's been forced into by the very liberals you're seeing outraged that Donald Trump was even invited to speak to black professional journalists and will resonate with black audiences. You see, black men right now, the polls show, are leaving the Democrat plantation. Harris Faulkner, she is a black journalist. She is a woman. She works for Fox News, and therefore she's evil. Well, she relayed to her colleagues on Fox News exactly what the mood was like in that room during this incredible exchange.
What the nation has seen is this incredible buildup with journalists here reportedly upset because Donald Trump was coming. Some of them. And some of them we really hadn't heard from. So what I loved about what you couldn't see today was how much of that audience was enjoying the moment of hearing from a candidate that they might not always agree with. And that is the whole point. That is the growth of journalism, to be able to listen and question those things that you may not know about because you don't often talk to that person or those people. That was the goal here. So for all of that pushback, young journalists that I'm talking to after the event are saying, well, we're glad he's here.
And that's exactly what Joy Reid doesn't want to hear. That's exactly what Al Sharpton doesn't want to hear. It's exactly what everyone up and down the line at MSNBC is scared of. That's why they're freaking out so much. And it's fantastic. It's delicious. It's delightful. It's lovely. That said, I do want to throw up one bit of a cautionary flag. Maybe. Hear me out. First of all, I'm with you. I love to see him be genuine, be himself, and recognize that these people are not there to be his friend. They have let him know that they are hostile, and they should be treated in kind. I'm with you on that. I love seeing Trump be Trump. It's great. It's refreshing still, even after all of these years, right? That's a good thing. And for us, for those of us who are already inclined to support President Trump, well, this is just sort of red meat for us. We love it. That's fantastic. And don't get me wrong. People who have judged so-called missteps from Donald Trump with the media in moments exactly like this over the course of the last 9 years of his public political life, they're constantly always wrong. I just played you the clip of him at the debate with Megyn Kelly. You remember when he sort of like went after Megyn Kelly and said, I can't believe she asked this question. I can't believe she... Remember all that? And that's it. He's going after a Fox News primetime host. He can't attack Megyn Kelly like that. He's done. It's over. It wasn't over. How many times in the 2016 campaign, is this the Donald Trump that you saw? And how many times was his political obituary written? You can't act this way. You can't say these things. You can't do stuff like that. It's going to kill you politically. He's dead and over. Hillary's going to win. And we know what happened. So anybody who's saying that Donald Trump just ruined his chances in November because of this is, well, I mean, what the hell are you thinking, guys? Have you not been paying attention? I'm not going to be one of those guys, all right? In fact, there's something refreshing to see a little bit of that 2016 energy in this election. Here's my concern. And it's not about black voters, and it's not about the media, and it's not about the elites in Washington, D.C., and it's not about Trump supporters. It's about the fact that this isn't 2016, that this is 2024. And there is still a voting bloc who maybe voted for Trump in 2016, didn't vote for Trump in 2020, and he needs to get them back. I don't worry about black voters in this regard. I don't worry about reporters. Here's who I'm worried about. I'm worried about the woman, the suburban mom, who opens up her Facebook page today and sees one of her Chardonnay drinking friends post a clip from this event with the comment, I don't know how anyone can vote for this racist. I'm worried about the mom who is not paying attention to the news as much as you might be, who isn't necessarily on board with Trump, but knows we got to have some kind of change in this country, who maybe saw the convention and saw the last few weeks and said, oh, well, maybe Trump is done with all the mean tweets and everything, and I'm ready to vote for him again. And then she goes to Instagram, and she's one of her favorite influencers, or maybe even somebody from her church, post a clip of Donald Trump and say, here we go again. See, that's what I'm worried about. Is it enough to hurt him? Might be. I don't know. There are certain states where that can make a difference. I'm glad he went. I'm glad he pushed back. I'm glad he fought. But there's one third rail there that I am concerned about. And that is, if this election in November is about policy, it's about inflation and the economy and jobs and the border and security and national security and foreign wars and imports and tariffs and about crime in the streets, Donald Trump wins. He wins in a landslide. If this election in November is about polarizing racial politics and identity politics, well, that's playing right into Kamala Harris's playbook. Kamala Harris wants this election to be about race. She wants it to be about those things. That's what her entire campaign is about, identity politics so far. And I fear that much of what Donald Trump said and did yesterday gives her more ammunition to work with. That's all. And you don't come here for a cheerleader. You come here for brute, frank analysis. And that's my only concern about yesterday. That said, we'll finish up with Tom Cotton, who bravely went on CNN and told it like it was. He's absolutely right. Sadly, though, it was on CNN, so who knows if anybody saw it.
First off, it's refreshing to see a presidential candidate who's willing to go in front of the media, something that Donald Trump knew would be a tough interview. It turned out to be a hostile adversarial interview, but he's been doing that for 9 years. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, has been hiding out for the 10 days that she's been a presidential nominee. Before then, she used to do interviews every 5 days or so, but now she hasn't faced any media at all. I guess she thinks she can hide out for 100 days until this election. More fundamentally, the issue isn't what race Kamala Harris identifies as. It's the fact that she identifies as a San Francisco liberal. She has a long record, not just as vice president, of being Joe Biden's border czar, standing by the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, but running for president herself. She said she was going to take away your health insurance on the job, while she was going to give health insurance to illegal aliens, and that we'd have a lot more of them because she promised that she would decriminalize illegal immigration. She cast the deciding votes as vice president in the Senate for the trillions of dollars of spending that has unleashed inflation on families that make it harder for them to make ends meet. Kamala Harris is a dangerous San Francisco liberal, and that's what really matters to Americans.
That's good, and that's smart, and that's right. And you're asked a question about race from Caitlin Collins, of course, and you pivot and say, yeah, no, what the real problem here is that our country is a disaster and Kamala Harris is at fault, and she's got terrible ideas. That was well done. A little bit more from Cotton.
When are you and the rest of the media going to demand that Kamala Harris come out and answer questions in an unscripted format about where she stands for this country, as opposed to continuing to focus on what Donald Trump said today? 4 years ago, Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Could you imagine a more insulting comment? Joe Biden is presuming to judge the political views of 1/8 of our fellow citizens based on their skin color. Did you ever ask Kamala Harris to condemn his remarks?
There are
Did you ever ask him or ask her if that was racist?
This is a question. You're a Republican senator, so I want to ask you about the Republican.
Did you ask Caitlin? Did you ask Kamala Harris? Caitlin, did you ask Kamala Harris why she's willing to serve as vice president for a man she essentially called racist and a segregationist?
They never asked those questions because, well, they had an election to win. Listen, this was an extraordinary day yesterday, and I'm glad we were able to show you the left-wing liberal media's heads exploding over it. How this plays out in November, we'll have to see. I've given you my opinion about what I do think the one danger zone is. But ultimately, I think when all is said and done, Trump's gonna be Trump. And take it for what the good parts of that and sometimes the challenging parts of it. Either way, Trump is gonna be Trump. And in the long run, that's a good thing.